Welcome to the Tip of the Spear podcast.
So I wanted to show the progression of illegal immigration that's happening in our country, especially what's happened since President Biden came into office and the feckless Republican opposition that we've seen. In fact, Vern Buchanan had a chance to impeach Mayorkas, who was the director of Homeland Security. He did not do it. He was one of only 19 Republicans who did not vote to impeach Mayorkas for his treasonous border policies. But this is the result of those treasonous border policies. We are now at over 2 million, or close to 2 million in 2021, all the way to over 3 million now this last year in 2023 of UDAs coming into this country. Now, I also wanted to show this, that Governor DeSantis in the summer of 2021 said that it looked like over about 70% of the UDAs were coming into Florida. Now, I did not see, and I cannot confirm this, as we talked to UDAs that were coming across, where they were headed for and what their destination was. But we do know that the Sinaloa cartel has operational control of this section of Florida, of Tampa, Sarasota, and Bradenton. So when they're coming across from Sinaloa cartel-controlled parts of the border, they are largely coming to Florida and to this area here. So we've got a huge problem, and I think it was very helpful to look at these numbers to try to grasp the overall magnitude of this issue. Now, these are UDAs that we know, 30% of them in Arizona, 30% of the UDAs said that they were intent on harming America, that they were bent on jihad. So that is a huge concern. We have a national security issue, let alone a financial issue, and I laid out the financial issue in the last video, and please go ahead and take a look at the YouTube channel and some of my posts so you can see the full video and the financial impact that it's having. But it's another thing to see these numbers as well.
So I'm Janine Hoffman. I have known Eddie Speir for 5 years. It's funny, my first experience with Eddie was a meeting to get a job. I had been an art teacher for a while, and this looked like a great opportunity. So I got to meet him. My first, and I guess part of it was my judgment was going to be like, oh, they're going to look at me and think that I'm a certain way. And after the meeting, I said to myself, oh, Eddie's probably thinking that I'm like somebody that I'm really not that person. And he said, thanks, it was nice meeting you. I hope, if I don't see you again, you have a good life, kind of a thing. And I was like, great. Then I had another meeting, and I was eventually hired. And one day in the hall, Eddie came up to me and he said, you know what, I am so glad we hired you. And I thought to myself, well, here's a guy who maybe had a judgment about me, but what was really cool is that he actually stood back and said, hey, maybe I got this wrong. And he actually wanted to get to know who I was. And what that experience told me a lot about him is he's thoughtful. He definitely has ideas, but he's willing to listen and to learn. And I think as a person, very few people give people another opportunity. They go, there's my judgment, that's who you are, and I'm never wrong. And the fact that he was actually open to that says a lot about as a person. He's an extremely honest man and very thoughtful. He's concerned and interested in how you feel, and he wants people to be in the best place for them to be successful. He doesn't have any pretenses. He doesn't care what you think, and I don't mean like he doesn't care, like he's going to say stuff just to tick people up. I mean, he feels strongly about certain things, and he's honest. He's transparent as a person, and you always know where he stands. And he listens to other people. He can change. That's what I'm saying. His ideas, his judgment about people might change, but who he is, his convictions are all about truth. His search for truth is so important, and I just think he's an awesome human being. There's very few people I say, that guy I would trust with anything. So if that helps in any way, Eddie Speir is probably the most genuine, thoughtful people I've ever met.
So we have Michelle Posey here, and I've met her on the campaign trail. She's running against James Buchanan in House District 74. Did I get that right?
You got that right.
House District 74. So obviously the connection is James Buchanan is the son of Vern Buchanan. So it runs in the family, and so we've got a lot of similarities. And I'd love to find out from you a couple things. What it's been like to run against the establishment, because that's what we're both up against, is the establishment. Your why and some things that you've learned along the way. Which one would you want to start with?
I will start with my why.
All right.
Because I think when you're a parent and a wife, a mother, a homeschooler, this is not the typical arena you would think of moving into. I have young adult kids. So I will back up a little bit and tell you, first and foremost, I am a daddy's girl. I know it might be a little old to say that, but I'm always a daddy's girl. So I think that bond between father and daughter is pretty important. So if you dial back a little bit to 2020, my dad was hospitalized after going on a trip up north. And I tried to communicate with the doctors. They were wanting to admit him in a small town hospital. And I tried to talk to them about what was going on. And it was obvious right from the get-go that they had diagnosed him with COVID. And there was going to be a treatment plan in place, and you, family member, didn't have anything to say about it. We really didn't need to talk to you. You're kind of in the way, stop calling. And that was a different take on medicine, from what I've always understood it to be.
And what state was this in?
This is in Illinois.
In Illinois.
I have a lot of family in Illinois.
Okay.
Or Illinois.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of political refugees here in Florida from Illinois.
Right, exactly. So seeing the treatment of my dad and the lack of being able to advocate for a family member, something felt really off by this. And I knew, and my dad knew, unfortunately, because we could communicate through FaceTime, that this was going to be something that wasn't going to turn out well for him. And it was very sad, because all the while I'm praying and just really wanting God to intercede. But what God was showing me was, on a massive level, this was happening across the nation. And it stirred me to anger. My dad passed away. So I know that he's in the presence of God, but for somebody like him who fought for his country, for this country to not turn around and fight for him to have these rights, really didn't sit well with me. And I could have done one or two things. I could have just stayed right where I was, angry, and let my heart harden, or I could have done what I chose to do, and that was to let God move me into what grief was going to look like for me. For me, it was healing to get involved immediately at the local level for me in Sarasota.
Yeah.
Looking at what some of the things that we were doing at our hospital. Were we following mandates from the NIH, the CDC, unelected bureaucrats? Were we doing that? And was that happening to families here? And I heard an overwhelming yes, it was. I watched our school district tie masks to children's faces without the consent of parents. I watched our school district at that time, with a rogue majority, put lanyards around children's necks if they chose to not be, to have an exemption from that mask mandate. It just felt like something out of a book from Nazi Germany. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, and prayed with my family for a bit and really listened to God. And everybody, all arrows were pointing to the same place, that all these policies for us are made at the state level. A lot of people, like you said, were refugees here for that reason, because they like that protection that the state offers. But there was far more we could do. And I thought, either I'm going to spin my wheels and be angry at what I'm seeing play out, or I'm going to jump in and get involved. And it was overwhelming. God said, go and get involved. So for me, it's hard to not be passionate. It's hard to not shed a tear when I talk about some of these things, because I've lived it, I've breathed it, and it's not just a career choice that somebody makes. It's a very personal thing for me.
Oh yeah, I just want to hear the story and have you get it out. But I want to jump in at so many places. First, whoever tells you not to share that passion and that tear and that drive, get that person out of your campaign, please.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we can talk about campaigns and what it means to run a campaign and the challenges there. But that's exactly, we have to remember, what did we like when we were trying to evaluate politicians trying to evaluate candidates. We wanted somebody that we felt like we could connect with, that was real,
Right.
that was authentic, that meant what they said, that and they weren't just reading a script
Right.
and just playing a part.
Right.
And you from the beginning have had that, and I just immediately, when I met you, I'm like, oh, and
Mm.
she's special. She's you say Mama Bear, I call you a little firecracker for truth.
Love it. I'll take it.
Yeah, but somebody that's passionate like that is amazing.
Thank you.
We also had a similar why maybe, but similar reaction to COVID and what COVID revealed. And I'm so glad that you're telling the story. And I don't think we should stop telling the story. You remember when everybody found out that, wait, these vaccines aren't working. Well, let's just forgive them and move on. Let's move on. Wait a second. Wait a second. You're the one who said we can't move on because of you and your decisions to not get vaccinated, to not bow down to the COVID mask mandates and the COVID tyranny that was happening. You're the ones who, especially your story and other stories that I've heard with Mario and Kimber Jimenez, and I'll share some of that story with you at another time, but how they were locked away from their families because of these protocols that were in place by unelected bureaucrats. You said it so well. They're unelected bureaucrats that are presuming to dictate to doctors who have done this their whole lives, and any doctor who would speak up, well, we saw what happened to them, and any pilots who would speak up and say, I don't want to get vaccinated, well, you lost your job, you get kicked out of the service, you're done, and they weren't even hiding that for a time. Now that the truth is coming out there, let's push this all aside. No, we need to remember, not for retribution, but to remind people of the dangers of tyranny on such a flimsy excuse to take control, so that had no scientific basis. When you really got down to it, there was scientific arguments, but certainly not a consensus, other than a consensus of the bribe bought and paid for NIH and CDC, and the doctors who would get paid for. And we see that clearly now, if you do your research. And for those who aren't doing the research, please do your research on medical freedom on some of these issues.
Right. You know, I feel like our country is just old enough that we could easily, and maybe in some ways have easily forgotten that passion of why we separated from a mother country for those freedoms. And COVID was just enough of an igniter that if you have to look for the silver lining in going through something like that as a nation, I think it stoked this, it's kind of like an American spirit. People call it MAGA, people call it all these other things. No, it's an American spirit that is in our genetics. It's God-breathed, and once you ignite that, it's going to play out the way it's going to play out. We're here. We're not going anywhere. Our message is clear. The people can feel it. We're resonating with the voters because we are the voters.
Yes.
And I just think, you know, I hate what happened through COVID, but God's going to use this for a really big, I think a really big message.
Amen. And it's an American spirit. And I also call it the spirit of the West, because even before America, this spirit was there. The spirit of, you know, we got the flag over here, don't tread on me. That was before the American flag. There's a spirit of the West that says we will not be controlled. That's why they kept moving west and west and west to Western Europe, then to the Americas. That is a part of our DNA. You're exactly right. And that is igniting. And it will, there's times that flame will dwindle, and it's dwindled, but it will stoke again, and it's stoking. I am encouraged. I'm incredibly encouraged when I go and talk to people and find out what when you actually knock on doors and meet people. It's incredibly encouraging. So at first, here's my 5 stages of grief once I realized that God wanted me to run for Congress. Okay. At first, it's like, honestly, it was fear. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to go out there. I don't know. I haven't done this before. And then I started doing some research, and then I was angry, like very angry. I voted for Vern Buchanan. There's people who have voted for James Buchanan. I'm sure honestly, and we'll get to this, they're clearly establishment politicians. I mean, without getting into the nuance, we can bundle them together. Don't mean to use a pun of the word bundling as far as campaign goes, but has establishment. There are people who are just going through the process. They're not real. You can't resonate with them. You can't connect with them. They're just playing a part in a political machine. This part is the Republican establishment. This part is the Democrat establishment, and they together are the uniparty who play like they're fighting so that people can connect with the Republicans and say, that's my guy. And a lot of people have just voted R and they recognize the name, and we've got to fight against that. Now, there's a lot of grassroots people who have seen Vern Buchanan and consequently just the overall establishment, and I believe James Buchanan has people who will, when the crisis comes, they'll be dancing in the White House. They'll be hanging out with Democrats. They're more aligned with Democrats when the real issues come up, when it's time for a real vote, a meaningful vote. Frivolous on conservative on frivolous issues, but liberal on important issues and impactful issues is what I found. But anyway, back to I was I was scared, then I was angry, and now I'm encouraged. And you just really hit the nail on the head with there's an American spirit that's igniting, and it's for freedom, it's for liberty.
Well, and I think too, for example, I get asked a lot of times things about my opponent, and I want to stress, you can be a great person and you can run for office, you can hold office, you can do a great job. But then there becomes a moment where, for me, at the state level where I'm running, I have an issue with the fact that we have a strong conservative Republican trifecta, right? We have the House, the Senate, and the governorship. And we slow walk legislation that will pass, that we need to pass in order to protect us. We understand what needs to be done. We have the ability to take it and run, and we don't. And I would watch, it's not like a personal attack on them themselves, our opponents. It's more just watching what they do or what they fail to do. Things like not showing up for the number one thing I hear when I knock on a door. I try to ask, so what's real important to you? I mean, here's kind of what I stand for. Out of that, what's most important? By far, the overwhelming response is, listen, we don't have any of these other things if we don't have election integrity. And my next statement is always, do you know that your current representative, who I'm running against, couldn't make his way to his seat for a vote on election integrity? Now, I may think you're right on issues, I may think you're wrong on issues, but you're not elected to be indifferent. And that's an abuse of that power, in my opinion. Yeah. So now there's no other choice. I can like you, I can think you're a wonderful family man, I can think all these things about you. You failed at your job. And it's black and white. In the real world, when we fail at our job, you're given a pink slip. I'm giving the American people and the Florida people the right to issue pink slips in 2024. It's not personal. Just let them go. We need new people and new blood.
That's right. That's right. And it's interesting, especially between state and the federal level, because what I'm seeing at a federal level, because there's not nearly as much election integrity issues that can be handled at a federal level as there are at a state level. But what can happen at a federal level is to secure our borders. Not what can handle, what is constitutionally mandated to happen is to control our borders. And the same thing happened there. We're comparing notes with Buchanan's here. Vern Buchanan had an opportunity to impeach Mayorkas, whose border policies through the DHS are nothing short of treasonous. To invite our enemies in and then give them a $5,000 debit card, transportation and housing and free healthcare is treasonous. I don't know how. Please, somebody try to argue their way out of that. Those are treasonous border policies. And we had a chance to impeach Mayorkas. And guess where Vern was? He was with James somewhere else.
I was going to ask, is that when he was bowling? I don't know. I can't remember.
He wasn't voting, and he wanted to avoid that vote, and he was one of only 19 Republicans who did not vote to impeach Mayorkas. That is the number one issue that people have, and rightfully so. We're not a country if we're just allowing people in and have no border whatsoever. I wish it was just we had no border whatsoever, but then you just give them all of our resources and overwhelm all of our resources, a la the Rules of Radicals book by Saul Alinsky,
Yeah.
which is Marxist. I mean, they told us what they're doing, and now they're doing it. So yeah, I'm tapping back into that anger part right there.
It becomes a righteous anger. I mean, it is part of your why, and
Yeah.
and I think the voters and the people, it resonates with them because they're overwhelmingly they're done with talk. We want to see action, and I think that can be played out for both of us. Even in the Republican Party, you go all the way up to the RNC chair. You know, how many freebies do you get before we continually do not do what we said we were going to do each election cycle, before we just say, you know what, we're looking for new blood, we're looking for a new way. So much of
That's right.
our election and I think just political structure, I'm finding, has been handled almost ceremoniously, and that's not the intent of it. We have to get back to getting fighters and people with grit in office, and
Oh, that's good.
you're one of them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And likewise. But when you say ceremoniously, I completely agree. Almost like it's the ruling class and it's a ceremony for them to hand over Vern Buchanan's seat to James Buchanan. We know that that was the game plan, and there might be some other people that wanted to step into that. But you stepped up against the establishment. Tell me about some of your first recognitions that the establishment was against you and that they didn't want you doing what you felt like God was calling you to do.
Right. It's been interesting. So, you know, our state constitution says we have, for our legislature, they're voted every 2 years. So technically, my opponent has, in 2024, would have another 2 years before they're termed out. Thank God for term limits. So some people will say, and they've said it very publicly, that, you know, you need to wait your turn.
Yeah.
Let him finish out his 2024 cycle, and then, you know, think about 2026. Here's my thing. Again, personally, I'm looking back just 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, what happened with my dad. We don't have 2 years. We've been shown by the global elites and radical left what they can do in 2 years. And I'm sorry, I'm not sitting back waving a white flag because you think your seat is ceremonious in nature. And the other thing is, listen, if the Constitution says these elections happen every 2 years, who are you to take away the people's voice to be able to have a primary every 2 years? That, to me, again, if you'll sit back and listen to people talk, they will tell you exactly what they feel. And if people at the Florida legislative level are already starting to say that, wait your turn, that to me is a slap in the face to the American people and to the people of Florida. How are you governing then? If that's your basic thought about people running for representation to represent people, then how are you going to justify actually fighting for the American people when you're in office? You obviously think that there is a pecking order, and we're not a part of that. So I just think, look, now it's just fun. Let's shake it up, because now you've told me who you are, and you've told me what you feel, and you've told me what you think of the little man. And I think a lot of people out there are feeling it, and it's time. It's time for us to take that control and that republic back, because I think both of us will be the voice for the people. Yeah. The idea, and I don't want to carry on too much, but you know, the idea that there's obviously 3 separate branches of power, right? Even in the state.
Yeah.
I've met with more legislators who will tell me, listen, you have to go to the executive, you have to go to the governor's office to make sure that, for this bill, to make sure that they're on board. I'm sorry, that's an imbalance of power. Those bills need to resonate and come from the people and work its way up through the legislative branch and then over. I'm not going to the executive branch to ask if you're okay with this, if this is what the people have told me they want. And I think, again, that just speaks to the culture we're having right now.
That, boy, you said it so well. There's an entrenched establishment that presumes to be the ruling class, and everything else is second class. And unfortunately, we the people are second class. And so if you really want to represent we the people, I'm sorry, but you're going to be against that establishment. Now let me ask you, who said people that have been public, who's said, no, you got to wait your turn?
It was so disheartening. I was at a, I live in Northport.
Yeah.
And, I'm from Northport. So I was at a local Republican meeting, and it was a very clear, resounding to a room full of people. When I tell you a room full of people, Eddie, a room full of people, wait your turn. Any other person maybe that would have sidelined them, but for me, that was just more fuel to the fire.
And that is the DNA of the American spirit. If you hear that and there's not something that bubbles up inside of you that says that's not right, that's not the way our founding fathers created the Constitution, framed the country, and our laws,
Mm-hmm.
to protect we the people. That's exactly what they warned against, the entrenched establishment of career politicians. That's the way they act. And then they control. And they love the ceremonial type of honor that is just natural. And you start to give it to them. It's like, oh, look at this person. But no, there's something that's American that says, no, we the people, you cannot rule without the consent of the governed.
Yes.
And when we run against this establishment head on, and we see that they are not our friends, that there is just a very thin veneer of conservatism and constitutional lip service, when behind the scenes there's deal making and there's a good old boy network and you're not in it, then something's wrong. And that is what people are sick of. And you could see it and you could recognize it in somebody like you, your initial reaction to that. A lot of people will go, oh, I've made a mistake. Oh, and shrink back. That's not American.
Absolutely.
That is not American. And courage is contagious. And your courage is contagious to other people. And I just want to encourage you to keep going and to keep fighting, because it is making a difference. It is making a difference regardless. Each day, people will look and recognize that we do have a voice. We will not be silenced.
And the way that scenario played out, my first gut instinct, my first thought was, what are you doing to the voice of the people?
Yeah.
If all we're to do constitutionally is give people a choice every 2 years with a healthy primary, what's the harm in that? Why does that seem like something that is so threatening? It's not your voice, and whether as a representative, as to whether or not you like that or you like my choice as a private citizen. It's the people. They will, on August 20th, 2024, for me, on my primary date, they will make a very resounding choice.
Yeah.
Nobody should get in the way of that. Nobody has the right to use their authority and their stage to get in the way and usurp what the people want. And that, to me, it was, like you said, it was like a doubling down of, yep, this is why you're doing it.
Yeah. And I remember as a voter, like, I want a choice. Give me a choice. And even if I vote for this person and this person wins or doesn't win, I am speaking. I'm speaking. My voice is heard. I am behind this person. A lot of other people are behind this person. Please listen. That you barely won. You don't have a massive majority to go up to DC or Tallahassee and do as you wish. No, you need to understand and represent the whole of the people. Now, this goes all the way to Democrats as well. That, as we win, we need to represent the whole of the people, but it's connecting to the people. Absolutely. And the Uniparty gives lip service to the people, and unfortunately, we've seen that, and we've walked up against it. Tell me some more about your campaign, things that you've learned in the campaign, because I think people that will watch this, some of the people that will watch this are people who are like, I wonder if I should run. Let me see. Yeah. And that's what I want to do. Is I'm doing a campaign. I want to be a roadmap to other people. Hey, learn everything. Any kind of America First constitutional person who feels like they have to. They're why I've got to do something. Right. And to me, I can't stand before God and say I didn't do everything I can to protect and stand up for this country when people have bled for my freedoms
Yes.
and died for my freedoms, the least I can do is risk everything for them in
Yes.
politically. So
Absolutely.
tell me about as we kind of draw out a blueprint. What would you tell somebody who is thinking about maybe the next cycle,
That's a great question.
jumping into
That's a great
this?
question. You have to, in my opinion, I mean, obviously it's been done many different ways over the course of the years. You talked about maybe feeling like you don't know if you have the knowledge to run for any office. And I keep thinking we've got somebody in the White House right now who has 45 plus years of experience. I mean, trust me, you're not going to screw it up any more than he has. So maybe your lack of experience and your common sense might be something that might be a plus for you.
The bar is real low.
They have really set the bar low. I think you have to first, I think, have a calling from God for that, because there's different levels of service. Whether it's running for an office, that's Congress, whether it's state, even school board elections. Maybe it's something like your HOA. Maybe it's being a part of somebody else's campaign. Do you have that helper gift? People that are very gifted in media and in social media, these young people that are very techie, you can find a way to get plugged in to be a part of the bigger movement. For me, it has to be something that you hear God tell you to go, and also getting the blessing of your family. I think it was important to me. Maybe I'm just old school like that, but they're going to be in for a certain amount of things they didn't ask for. Yeah. So them understanding that. And the third thing is really just finding out what things are you passionate about. Like for me, it was very easy. I homeschooled 18 years, both my children fast tracked through their education because they were given, literally, it was like somebody just didn't clip their wings and let them fly and let them soar. And they were able to get bachelor's degrees by 18 and 20 years old because they were just able to be free to make those choices academically. Yeah. So, school choice, parental involvement in schools, and in school choice, having the parent, not the state, be the one to dictate what's best for that child. That's the number one thing in my platform. Medical freedom, obviously, that's no surprise to anybody there that that's important to me. Making sure that people give proper consent before taking things like immunizations. What does that look like? How can we protect people more, to know that they're giving consent and to understand what they're giving consent for, what's in that vaccine? Yeah. Really trying to bridge together the relationship between patients and physicians and cutting out that third party, big pharma arm that wants to try to regulate that. Election integrity. Those are all things that they automatically started coming to me. So every person can think about what might be their main whys, what might be their main platform, and having those solidified is important. And then choosing a small circle around you. I'll tell you, we have what's called the Posey Posse. So this is a large grassroots group that they all are contributing one way or another. Some might be able to contribute financially. Some are giving their volunteer time. Others will pick me up to drive me to meetings because, we're trying to juggle with vehicles. So it's a big family, but ultimately in a campaign setting, you need to have a smaller circle of people that are very trusted, people that you want to allow to have your ear, people that I feel like God has called also for a similar mission, and I want to hear what God's saying to them. Because, sometimes that's how God works. I'll think God is telling me something, and I'll hear two other people that have no idea that I'm thinking this or stewing this over, and they'll sort of confirm that. And I know that's how the Holy Spirit works too, being able to confirm. You've got to have trusted people around you, and then being independent. Nobody's going to go do this for you. Nobody's going to make it happen. Nobody's going to make the calls. Nobody's going to knock the doors. And I think if we raise a new generation of independent-minded people to take political office, then you do away with the need for this nanny state of, political culture where you're being told what you're going to handle this legislative session. I'm sorry, who's telling me? Because my constituents are telling me something different. You need to have boldness. And if you can get through a campaign with that independent mindset, I think that's going to help you govern independently. Yeah.
Again, it's the American spirit.
It is.
It really is. Yeah. It's this rugged individualism. I agree with you. And the only thing that I would add is do not wait for somebody to tap you on the shoulder. I think we've we've gone through life
Mm.
waiting for somebody to direct our lives. If you feel a passion and you feel a love and a need to serve, and so many people do, get connected in something. Get connected at a political club.
Mhm.
Fight against election integrity issues. Get connected with a local Republican
Right.
assembly.
Mhm.
There's many ways that you can get connected on a specific cause,
Yep.
and then you got to just step into it and then see where God is leading you,
Yes.
and then go from there.
Yeah.
Definitely. But the only thing that I would say is don't wait for somebody higher up from the establishment to tap you on the shoulder and say, could you do this, please?
Right.
I think that was in my mind. I was like waiting for somebody to do that,
Yeah.
and it didn't happen.
No.
And I don't think it's going to. Well, I mean, I guess it did happen a little bit with me with DeSantis tapping me on the
Mhm.
shoulder for New College of Florida, but I don't think that's the norm.
Right.
And I think people need to step into things.
Mhm.
It's difficult, but begin just walking and
Right.
seeing where God might use your gifts. And I like the way you
Right.
said that, because we all have different gifts.
Right.
It's not like, well, I'm not gifted as X or Y or Z. You're gifted in something.
Mhm.
You're gifted in something. I guarantee it.
And sometimes I think we just need, I look back at even like 2022, the school board race, and now, some of the seats are up for reelection in Sarasota in 2024. Um, sometimes you just need somebody. I think God just wants somebody to put their foot in the door
Yeah.
and say, you know what, I'm teachable. I got a lot to learn. I have 2 ears. I'm willing to listen. But this is my territory.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm here, you're not going to indoctrinate these kids. You're not going to hypersexualize these kids. I may not understand how a lot of these, how funding works. I may not, there may be a learning curve, and to know that those helping hands are out there to help you learn. Now, I mean, now with the internet, there's so many ways that you can help educate yourself on things.
Yeah. The Leadership Institute.
Yes,
Fantastic.
don't feel like you have to have all the answers. Actually, I think there's something humbling to say, I don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you what, it's your district. You've got the answers. If we need help with insurance, I'm going to our insurance people. If we need help with, for example, we don't truly have constitutional carry here in Florida. We stopped short of that.
Yeah.
Went and talked to our local sheriff in Sarasota County. I actually watched him at an event, and somebody asked him, what do you think about, the constitutional carry, our version of it? He said they didn't go far enough. And I thought to myself, I wonder why you're not the first person that they talked to about that. To me, I would go to our leading, law enforcement and say, how do you feel about true constitutional open carry? How do you feel about that? And I would take their knowledge and expertise on how I'm going back to Tallahassee. That wasn't done. And that's
what you're describing is very complicated and very difficult. I'm just kidding. No, it's just representation. You're just representing we the people and finding out the information and being humble and not presuming to know everything. And I've found, just as way of encouragement to somebody who might be running, I found it invigorating and fun and exciting to learn so much. It's been fun.
It's fun. And people are getting excited. Look, knocking doors. I've been doing this a little while now, and the number one thing that I have to let people work through when I meet them is the feeling like they can't make a difference, and letting them kind of talk through that, and then helping them understand, look, I can't do this without you. Whether it's because I need yes, your vote, or I need your ideas, I need you to help either volunteer or donate. I literally can't and don't want to do this without you. We have to partner together. And once people understand that I'm in on this, that
they're part of it.
I really want them to I want it to be like wildfire, and I want it to spread, because when you have that many foot soldiers looking out for our republic, they can't do things like they did in COVID again. Never again.
Yes, never again. Interesting campaign story. I'll share one with you, and you share one with me. How's that?
Okay.
I've found so many political consultants coming, and I have found the political consulting industry, and I cringe a little bit, because as I share this, I typically insult people, so forgive me beforehand. but I have not found a good political consultant. I found that they want to put everything into this one size fits all, one stop shop. And just knowing in business that, wait, you haven't proven yourself to me. But they want to turn you into a fundraising machine. They take 80% of all the money that you raise, and only 20% goes to the actual campaign. I can't in good conscience go ask somebody to give money to my campaign if 80% of it goes somewhere else to the establishment. That's what it is. There's an establishment of political consultants and campaign managers. That's why my wife is my campaign manager, by the way. She's doing a great job.
Love it. Oh, I love her.
Need some help there as far as other overall project management. And I think we hired somebody. I'm excited about the team is growing. Nice. But enough about my campaign. I guess the lesson to be learned is do not go with a one-stop shop, because they will turn you into a fundraiser for them and a little bit for you. You'll get a pittance from it, and maybe you win, maybe you lose. They don't care. And it just doesn't work. They don't offer the value. It doesn't look like they offer the value. And so what I ended up doing is asking everybody who came and talked to me or who was recommended to me, will you do a la carte services? I just want this, I just want this, I just want this. And I just want it for a shortened time, not the entire election cycle. You've got to prove yourself for a month. Let me see what you can do for a month. You say that you'll be able to provide X, Y, Z service. Prove it to me, show me. And this is just business common sense to me. Yeah. And I guess it's not common sense, but it's what I learned as an entrepreneur. You've got to find the right people. You got to find them quickly. So this is very much like building a new business.
It is. It is. I found what worked best for me is I kind of, that role of political consultant, I really thought about that. If one of the things that disturbs me the most is that I feel like there is a barking order that comes from a ruling elite down through our legislator imposed on the people. If I really feel that way, then I need to be prepared to not take orders necessarily all the time and have something dictated to me. That stepping into that arena of a consultant relationship where they're probably extremely knowledgeable and wonderful with what they do, but if they're already taking you and minimizing you, they're almost kind of creating that person that's going to go and govern being less and having somebody above them tell them what to do. And
that's
so
exactly.
you really need to.
Here's your talking points. Hit these talking points, and then they try to craft it and say, well, you're passionate about this and this. Okay, we'll take a little bit of that, but throw that away. That's not going to play. Wait, no, that's what I'm passionate about. Give the voters a choice. If they don't like me, fine. At least I've provided a service to we the people and giving them a choice.
Right. I took my consultant responsibilities, I guess you would say, and I've leveraged it out to about 3 or 4 different people that all have strengths and all have my ear. But I've found a satisfaction in knowing that I'm the last call, because nobody's going to stand next to me in Tallahassee to make the tough judgment calls and boost me up. Nobody's going to do that. I've got to already, this is like a boot camp. I've got to already have that embedded in me. So that's kind of like what the campaign is. It's a boot camp for that.
I want you to watch my podcast with Mike Beltran, because it's lonely. It's lonely. If you're going to be against the establishment, he describes it very well, and I'm ready for it. But again, I have to. I can't just watch this country be taken over by the entrenched establishment of career politicians. They've shown what they can do, and it's not good.
It's funny. It's like you can be established and not be establishment. You know what I mean? I feel like...
But there is a general correlation. The more established you are, the more established. It's not an absolute. So I agree with you, but there definitely is a correlation there.
And I think it's, maybe some people just need a little tug to the right side. If you don't have an ear,
pun intended.
Yeah. and I think that's what we really need. We need strong individuals who can vote in a way that really pushes those that we consider establishment to really put up or shut up. It's your time to vote. I'm pushing this bill, and this is where I'm at. This is the line I'm towing. Now I'm forcing you to go on the record. And that's why these, not showing up for votes things really upset me, because
Yeah.
this is with a conservative majority. Like, what are you going to do when it really, the heat really gets dialed up? So I think we need to have people that will toe this line of true conservatism, almost to force those that don't want to fall into that to show us who they really are. And that's why I don't look at it as like us against them. I look at it like, you need some redirecting. You've lost your way. This is what the people need. And you're either going to come over here and realize that, or you're going to expose yourself, and the people will be able to make that choice then once they see who you really are.
Yes. Let's give people the visibility of how the representatives will vote on key issues, and then stand behind it. The truth doesn't need to hide, doesn't need to run, doesn't need to redirect.
Yep.
No, the truth will stand and take all the shots, and it will not move.
Right.
So we need to stand with the truth. And if I'm wrong on something, I want to know it.
Right.
And as long as we're not full of pride, we can say, "Oh, I missed it here. I learned something new." No problem. The American people are almost too forgiving, but they are plenty forgiving if there's somebody that's humble, authentic, and genuine, who is trying to do their job to represent them.
Right.
And the American people can see the difference.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's why somebody in your seat, with what you do, being education driven, would really be ideal for this, because you do have to remain teachable. You go in there with a strong conviction, but at the end of the day, pretending that we know it all is just not going to work. And that's not part of the motto of even the school. You have people here that have a strong conviction, and now they're finding their way of, maybe what God's calling is for them. And I feel like you're a good leader in that way. You obviously lead the school very well. The school's had amazing success. I think that you have that special something, but are relatable to the people. People need to know. I mean, gosh, a congressional seat is scary, right? I don't know many people that can say, "Hi, I've met my congressman or woman." You'll be somebody that will change that. I know.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I actually get energized by talking to people.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. That's the function. In each business that I've had. Sorry to make this about me, but you started it.
It is.
Thank you. That was very nice. But in business, if you want to be successful in business, there are all these traps to get disconnected from the customer, to get disconnected from the value. Well, the salesperson or this person, you've got to maintain a connection to the customer and to the value that you're providing. And as a politician, you got to maintain the connection to we the people, all the people. That's your job. You're a representative. And honestly, this is part of what makes me angry is I've seen Vern Buchanan, and I know it's the same with James Buchanan as well. They do not want to connect. They want to be on a stage in a controlled environment with questions that are told to them beforehand so that they can have talking points and then exit without any kind of actual debate, actual discussion, and actually held accountable, because they are accountable to we the people. We've got it mixed up right now. We don't, they do. And they need to be held to account.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So true.
That's good. Well, thank you so much. It's always great to see
Eddie.
you.
It's amazing.
And we'll see you again. We'll have to do some kind of event together.
Awesome. Do you mind if I let people know where they can find me?
Oh, are you kidding me? No, please do.
Well,
please do.
I just want to let people know it is true what I said, that we can't do this on our own. We need help. You can read all about me. My website is www.pozzieforflorida.com. It's POZZIE. And you can get plugged in to join the Posey Posse. I need volunteers. I need people that want to just email me your concerns. I will represent the whole state. So it doesn't matter where you're at. I want to hear from you. And obviously you can also donate there. Doing something aside from the original political machine means you have to create your own machine. And it's going to take people like you and I and the people watching to donate. So
that's right. And getting connected. And I'm excited about getting connected with you, with Mike Beltran, with and we talked earlier about Anthony Sabatini,
Mm-hmm.
other people who are constitutional conservatives, America first, and understand the priority, basically anti-establishment.
Yeah.
I hate to be called anti-anything. I'm pro-Constitution.
Exactly.
It's just that the people who say they're pro-Constitution, a lot of them are not. But anyway, building a network of people and resources to help, I think is going to go a long way, definitely. And it's not just a campaign for me, it's a movement.
Absolutely.
It's a movement. And I can see the same thing with you, too, also.
Thank
So I'm
you.
excited
Thank
to
you.
continue working with you.
I am too.
Yeah.
It's just the first of many.
All right. Awesome.
Welcome to the Tip of the Spear podcast.